We begin this episode by acknowledging the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we record and share these stories. We pay our deepest respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations peoples listening or watching today's episode. We honour those who walked before us, their enduring connection to country, and the stories held in land, sky, and spirit. May we listen with openness and learn with humility. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Beyond the Veil Australia podcast, where history, mystery, and the unexplained collide. From eerie encounters to forgotten histories, from channeled messages to scientific perspectives, we explore phenomena that defy easy explanation. I'm Heather, your guide through the shadows and the host of Beyond the Veil Australia podcast. Together, we'll unravel paranormal events, curious connections, and the questions that refuse to stay quiet. So whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or somewhere in between, this space is for you. Welcome. Last season, we lifted the veil, but this time we step through. So, the passage is open. What waits beyond is now calling your name. Knowledge doesn't simply vanish, it sinks. It settles into the deep layers of human memory, into myth, into ritual, into stone. And sometimes it resurfaces in place where it shouldn't exist. Across the ancient world, cultures separated by oceans and millennia held knowledge that defies explanation. Astronomical cycles, medicinal formulas, geometric constants, and stories of beings who taught them. In this episode, the journey continues into the heart of that mystery. This is Beyond the Veil Australia podcast, and this is part 2 of the ancient code. Was it lost knowledge or just a really good guess? Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of the ancient code. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody that has been following along on the socials. I've really enjoyed seeing more and more people jumping in and joining in on the journey, and it's been lovely to connect with a few more people as well, which is always really lovely. It's been a little bit a bit chaotic, obviously since the lead up to Christmas. Obviously I'm pregnant with baby number 3, so it's just been a little bit chaotic. Obviously in Australia it's summer for us, so we're still in the depths of the summer holidays, if you will. So even though I'm back at my regular work, so is my husband, the kids do attend like a summer holiday care type thing. But being that I generally have one day off a week, I've also decided just in the couple of weeks before they go back to their school and their kindergarten routines, just to give them that extra day in the week to just try and chillax and ease into their year as well, because I know I need it sometimes too. So it's been a little bit slow on the front of trying to get some episodes done, just because it's been a little bit difficult to try and get some recording done between being tired, obviously getting back into work and, just trying to get the kids back into a regular routine. So hopefully we can get back into a good routine again, and my days off from my paid job will actually be able to be spent doing more in-depth work and actually doing a bit more recording. So if you've listened to part 1 or watched part 1, you'll probably see that I'm doing a double recording at this point in time. I really wanted to get both of these episodes recorded at once, so that I could just get them both edited and ready and out there for you all. So I had a bit of extra time in this awkward period of summer holidays where I could actually spend a little bit more time preparing for upcoming topics and investigations as well. So, yeah, welcome back. I'm really excited to be back behind the mic and getting the content back out there to you, because I do love this podcast. I do love being able to do this. I've really loved being able to connect with lots of new people. And yeah, I apologize if you have if you have been reaching out a little bit on socials lately. I've been a bit slower with trying to get the responses, just because it's been a little bit harder to do so. So yeah, hopefully we'll get back to normal pretty soon in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, and then we'll be able to just keep rocking and rolling as we usually do. But before we keep going into part 2 of the Ancient Code, I just wanted to also say thank you all so much for comments and for likes and for shares for the podcast as well. It is truly, truly appreciated. I can't thank you enough for helping me continue to do this. Again, this is a passion project. There's no there's no kind of financial gains for me doing this. It's just something that I love to do. So all of the comments that people leave, the shares, when people reach out on social media as well, it really truly does mean a lot. And yeah, thank you so much for engaging. And yeah, hopefully I'll be back up at proper capacity again very soon. But yeah, there's still lots coming for the rest of season 2. So stay tuned for that. Again, there's a lot of opportunities potentially coming up as well. So I'm sort of getting excited for 2026. Apart from entering motherhood again for the 3rd time, I think I'm sort of like a bit nervous about that, because it's been such a big gap between this one and my last one. And so it's, yeah, I'm sort of hoping that it's not going to interfere too much, famous last words, as they all say. But, being that it's baby number 3, a lot of people have given the advice that, they kind of just go with the flow. The hardest is going from 1 to 2. So if you've done that, going from 2 to 3, you'll be fine. I sort of get that vibe, but I also know that it's been a bigger gap between my youngest, who's 4.5, and this one, obviously, still being pregnant with it. It's going to probably be a bit of a rude shock again, but that's okay. I've learned to, oh God, my dad's going to love me saying this, because this is one of his favorite sayings and it fucking shits me to no end, but I've learned to adapt and overcome. I fucking hate that saying. I think it's the most ridiculous saying in the world, but I also see that it is fairly true in some circumstances. So yeah. Anyway, moving on into the actual podcast. In part 1, we obviously looked at some of the ancient structures and some of the mysteries surrounding that. So if you haven't already listened or viewed part 1, I'd highly recommend that you do that, just so it gives you a little bit more context for where we are today. And yeah, some of the thoughts and, processes that I'd had with trying to sort of understand it. Again, it's such a strange sort of topic, because it's, I feel like, there's always more questions than answers. And then even when you think you've got an answer, you've got another 10 questions on top of whatever that answer might be. So, yeah, I may go off on a few tangents again, only because it's sort of like I'm in my train of thought. I kind of just want to keep throwing it out there. And then, I love hearing what you guys think of that. If you've, got more knowledge on it, if you have the same kind of viewpoint of like, holy fuck, I didn't think about it like that, but yes, now my brain's scrambled, or, just to have those kind of conversations. Cause I think, there's a lot of power in conversations and being able to exchange knowledge and thoughts on different topics, particularly like the paranormal and, all of the intersectionality of that. I think it's definitely an area where, you can do so much and sort of get us to a certain level, but you sort of have another part of that's still being explored. So it's really fun to be able to engage and gauge other people's thoughts and I suppose evidence on different areas of the paranormal and where everybody's sitting. And yeah, it's just fun to do. So without further ado, we are now, after I've had a little ramble there to reintroduce everything again, we are going to move into our first segment, which is knowledge that shouldn't exist. So I'm really kind of, again, I'll probably go on a couple of little tangents and potential thought process deep dives. That must be a new word catchphrase thing that I've got going on right now. So buckle up, and I hope everybody's ready to deep dive into this one. But here we go. Knowledge that shouldn't exist. Across continents, ancient cultures possess knowledge far beyond what their tools, technology, or recorded history should have allowed. The Dogon people of Mali described Sirius B, a dense white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye, long before the telescopes existed. They spoke of its orbit, its density, and its companion star with uncanny accuracy. In ancient India, the Vedas described the speed of light with near-perfect precision. Texts thousands of years old referenced the Earth's orbit, the nature of gravity, and the structure of the cosmos. The Maya tracked precession, a 26,000-year astronomical cycle. That was a tongue twister, with a level of accuracy modern astronomers still admire. Their calendar predicted solar eclipses thousands of years into the future. In South America, the Nazca lines form geometric shapes only visible from the sky, long before humans had the ability to fly. And in Australia, Aboriginal songlines map the land with such precision that modern GPS systems have confirmed their accuracy. These cultures were isolated, separated by oceans, separated by time, and separated by language. Yet they held knowledge that seems connected. Some researchers argue that this is evidence of a forgotten global civilization. Others believe it points to a universal human intuition, a sense that we've lost. And then there are those who whisper that knowledge came from somewhere else. Again, we kind of touched on this a little bit in part one, which was, we would sort of talked about the blueprint and, mathematics and different things like that. But again, it sort of comes back to like, is it knowledge that's come from somewhere else? Is it something as like a universal human intuition, or is it more that it's like a forgotten global civilization rather than smaller groups of civilizations? There's a lot of questions around that still that I have, because I can see all how those things would be plausible, but I can also see that they could all be again, it comes back to that thing I talked about in part one, and I talked about it in one of the other, it was the tools of the trade, where it was about the two tacos, like, why don't we have both? In this case, it's why don't we have all of them? Like, I really think that, I think that a lot of this stuff is so interconnected with other things that it can't just be put down to one sort of concrete theory. I think that maybe it's, a little from column A, a little from column B, and maybe even a little from column C as well. Like, I feel like it could be a good intermix of all of those things. So again, it was something we kind of touched on, but in a slightly different light, with the knowledge of the blueprints and the mathematics in order to be able to build these structures. But we're going to keep going. But in this one, we're going to look at the, in this particular segment anyway, the psychic architect theory. So this will be kind of interesting to explore and see if it potentially supports what we spoke about in part one, whether it poses, again, another question, which is probably highly likely, or whether it's just something different again that, again, we're probably going to sit there and go, fuck, now I've got 10,000 more questions about this. But I don't know. Let's see how we go with that, and I'll see how my thought processes are going as we're going through it too, because sometimes I can have a thought about something when I've researched it, and then even when I'm recording, sometimes I'll go, fuck, actually, I never thought of it like that. Maybe I need to think about it like this, which is probably why I go off on tangents a lot, because I'm having active thoughts while recording it, even though I've had active thoughts when researching it that could be completely different. So let's dive into that one. In many ancient cultures, construction wasn't simply engineering, it was ritual. Shamans entered trance states, priests fasted for days, and builders meditated before placing stones. communities gathered in ceremony before the first foundation was laid. These weren't symbolic gestures, they were functional. Accounts from ancient Egypt describe priests using blue lotus to enter visionary states before designing temples. In Aboriginal cultures, songlines, or maps of the land, were received through dreams. In the Andes, shamans described seeing the energy of the landscape before choosing where to build. The I'm going to say this wrong again. Gubelki Tepe, again, I'm sorry, I've probably butchered that again. Several workers reported dreaming of the same animal symbols that were carved on the pillars before they had even seen the pillars in person. Modern parallels exist too. Remote viewers, trained in controlled psychic perception, have described ancient sites they've never visited with startling accuracy. Some have sketched chambers later confirmed by archaeologists. The psychic architect theory suggests that ancient builders accessed altered states of consciousness to perceive geomagnetic fields, energy lines, resonant frequencies, intuitive geometry, or even non-physical intelligences. It proposes that architecture was guided not only by tools, but by perception. A perception humanity may have lost. Again, I do think about that a little bit, and I think what's interesting is that, there's like multiple different things, like the obviously like geomagnetic fields and energy lines, and like the non-physical intelligence, like all those sort of things that we just kind of listed off. I think that kind of what we discussed in part one kind of supports that, I guess. I think, there's probably lots of little theories like this that probably do intertwine a lot more than what we think when we're sort of looking at them as just individual theories. I think, but that's just the way my brain thinks about it is, it's like, okay, cool. We've got a couple of these different theories, and somehow, even though they're technically different in the terms of what they're looking at, you can see where they intertwine a little bit and how they kind of connect, and it's sort of creating this validation of the one type of thing, right? Or the phenomena might be the right word. So, I'm a little bit mind blown in a way, because I'm thinking about part one a lot in this, because this is kind of supporting what we kind of talked about in part one. So I was sort of, again, when I was researching it, I was sort of looking at things from sort of different perspectives, and I could see where they could connect. But I think now I'm sort of looking at it in, well, yeah, but I think they're still one and the same. It's just a slightly different, it's like a tree branch. Like it's the one thing, but it's like just going off in its own direction a little bit, but it's still connected to the main thing. Again, I'm probably going to have another 10,000 questions probably. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what you all think so far. Like, is there, if you've listened to part one and you're sort of listening through to part two, and just some of the things that we've touched on, do you feel that they are connected a lot with, like the ancient blueprints and the mathematics and, some of this technical knowledge and technical work? Do you think that it's possible that it's come from more of like a psychic architect theory? Do you think that the psychic architect theory is, like I described before, like the tree trunk is kind of the structure, or I don't know, we'll say structure, and then each of those theories comes off like a tree branch, and it all kind of connects into the one thing? Because that's sort of where I'm at this point now. Like, I sort of didn't think about it like that before, but now it's got my little mind ticking away a little bit, actually. But again, I know I referenced Skinwalker Ranch in part one as well, with a particular experiment they did. But now I'm sort of thinking about this, and I know that in several episodes over different seasons, the team has obviously had that there's been something with the mesa that they believe is within it. And they've been attempting drilling through the mesa to try and see what's in there. And once again, there's also that paranormal phenomena side of it where it's like they're getting so far and then something will happen as if to be like, you're not ready to explore this yet. Like it's that, yeah, we can see that you want to, but is your technology, is your human comprehension at a point where it can take in what it might find or is likely to find? It's that sort of thought process, I think. And yeah, it's strange that, yeah, like I've seemed to have been watching a little bit more of The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, and I've come back to Ancient Aliens as well, because a lot of the stuff that I'd seen over the years, it's very relevant to sort of where we're starting to explore some things here. And I think it's really helped put more of a broader perspective on ancient structures, because I think there's more of a connection between, things like technology beyond this earth, strange paranormal stuff, different capabilities for different points in time. And yeah, again, it always has me sitting here thinking, why the fuck do I do this to myself? Because I really enjoy learning about it, but I also sit there and go, but fuck, what have I actually learned? Because now I have more questions that at this point in time can't be answered. Like, what do I do with this information? Like, it's just going to sit there. Like, what do we do with this? Yeah, and it's, we sort of touched on, different types of, I guess, paranormal experiences that have been documented with some of these ancient sites. And it then, I suppose, now thinking about that too, is that, well, is that part of this psychic architect theory and the stone tape theory and, the thoughts that there is something beyond that's also sharing the information? Like, is it, I feel like we sometimes, like, we're trying so hard to understand something that we're trying to compartmentalize too much, rather than looking at everything as a big, general, broad, holistic approach, and kind of going, well, we can see how all of this connects, and all of this is connected for some strange reason, but how do we prove that it exists? How do we prove that this is whatever it is? Instead, we're kind of really compartmentalizing how we look at it. And I think, I did give an example in part one about Skinwalker Ranch. Over the seasons, they've had particular hotspots that they've investigated, and usually at the time when they've done these different experiments there, it's usually only been one, potentially two forms of data collection technology that they're sort of using. But in the recent episode that I watched, it really demonstrated that they'd used multiples of the same type of device that were also kind of unique to their own, on top of all of these other things as well. And they were able to actually capture more evidence of something that then kind of potentially answered some of their questions when they were able to kind of reflect on the previous experiments that they'd done. There was like a light bulb moment of like, well, maybe that's what we need to do, is we need to actually combine more instruments in what we're doing so that we get a bigger, broader picture, rather than compartmentalizing it and only using one LiDAR radar or one GPS tracker, or what, like, for example, whatever. But that was something that I'd sort of thought of. So, thinking about the psychic architect theory is that, it's slightly different across different cultures, but when you're thinking about it, they're all kind of doing the same thing. It's just that they're concentrating on something a little bit different. So some are going to be looking more at geomagnetic fields or energy lines. Some are going to kind of go more on intuitive geometry about, you'd be looking at the landscape. You'd be looking at, the I suppose the seasons for that area as such. You'd be, you'd be gathering all of that information before choosing where to build the structure. And I guess it then comes back to something along, with ley lines. Like, is that also interconnected in this as well? Is that part of the intuitive geometry, is being able to find where those energy lines are? And is it significant to build the structure on that line? Is there, what's this building supposed to be? And we talked about a bit in part one, was that a lot of these structures were they most of the time they were connected to a spiritual or a religious type of event, I suppose, for the civilization. So, that then sort of supports like that intuitive geometry and things like that, and that maybe that's the potential connection with ley lines. And is that how cultures were able to communicate from one part of the world to another at different points in time, as we were sort of talking about a little bit earlier in this episode. So again, it's one of those things that I feel like I just sit here and I try and piece things together when I'm researching it, but I also try and piece things together as I'm recording, because sometimes, as I said before, I can have probably a more compartmentalized viewpoint when I'm researching, because naturally I've got to break it down into relevant sections for each episode, because most of my episodes on topics are multi-part. So, you're sort of looking at, okay, well, where can I put this? Where can I put that? So you've probably got like this slight bias in your brain about how you're structuring something. But when you're in the process of recording it and you're looking at what you've covered across those episodes, and you're starting to think about it a little bit more, it sort of comes back to that. Maybe I'm starting to bring it back to that more generalized, holistic view of things, rather than it being compartmentalized at the time. So, is that what's happening with a lot of the scientific side of it? As we move forward, is it, yes, we've got technology there, but is it more about how can we use multiple points of these different types of technologies in the one go to see if it fits, if all of these different things seem to come up? Are we going to get more evidence of something if we utilize more? Which, logically any normal person would be like, oh, well, the more stuff you've got, the more stuff you're going to gather. But, I suppose it depends on what it is that you're trying to do the experiment for, like it's a lot of that sort of stuff. But I think, a lot of, from what I can sort of think about now, is a lot of stuff does get compartmentalized and we're not looking at it more broadly. And I think, again, this is just my thought process at this point in time, but would it make, does it make more sense to try and think about things a little bit more holistically? Because I know when I talk about, particularly my topics, like my topical episodes, is that, the paranormal is such a big, broad, intricate web of so much stuff that does intersect and does cross over, that when you want to explore a topic of the paranormal, that you're going to be coming across other things that do cross over with that. And I said this in part one, I have said it in the earlier topics as well, but I really do feel that, the ley lines, the ancient structures, and the UAPs, I feel like are more interconnected than, not to say that other stuff isn't. I think it absolutely is, but I feel like for this particular thing, I feel like those three connect more deep in this type of area, because I feel like there's more connection there. And then you've got other elements of the paranormal that kind of are a result of those three things, if that makes sense. I could be just completely going off on a random fucking tangent that makes no sense to anyone, but to me, in my train of thought right now, it like I say, there's so much we've got to cover. I do have to kind of break it down into sort of more compartmentalized sections, in order to be able to actually explore some of the more specific things. But I think, realistically, if I was to choose a particular sort of subtopic within these topics, I would probably be able to expand more on that and kind of go, all right, well, if I was to look at Stonehenge specifically, like just purely the Stonehenge, it'd be really interesting to see how much more intersectionality of different areas of the paranormal actually come into just focusing on that, rather than trying to sort of separate topics of the paranormal, such as ancient structures and ley lines and haunted locations and etc. So I feel like that might be kind of where I'm looking at it at the moment at this point in time in this episode. I don't know if that's something that other people have had, if people have had that thought process for a while, if it's something that you'd never actually kind of thought of, and having listened to the podcast and then sort of hearing me ramble about shit again, you're probably just like, well, fuck, yeah, actually probably didn't think of it like that. But yeah, now the more I think about it, it makes sense, like it's just, I'm just curious to hear if it's just me that's just doing this to myself, or if there are other people out there that tend to do this and then sit there and go, why the fuck did I do this? Because I really want to learn, but there's only a certain point you can get to, without going on for 50 years about it. But yeah, curious about that particular theory. But we're going to kind of look at a little bit more in some of the different hypotheses around like lost civilization and perception, sort of kind of keep it going from there. So we'll see how that even intertwines into the psychic architect theory, because I'm kind of curious to see now what my thought process is after we've just done a bit of a ramble and a deep dive of my thought process in where we're going next. So yeah, let's see how the rest of this goes. But we're now going to move into segment 3, which is lost civilization and perception, or lost perception, I should say. So yeah, let's have a look at some of these. 2 major theories dominate the debate: the lost civilization or lost perception. The lost civilization hypothesis. This theory suggests that long before recorded history, a global civilization existed, advanced, interconnected, and wiped out by a cataclysm. Evidence includes the precision stonework at Puma Punku, underwater ruins at Yonaguni, the Bimanini Road in the Bahamas, genetic bottlenecks suggesting population collapse, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which was a comet strike around 12,800 years ago. Supporters argue that fragments of this civilization's knowledge survived in myths, oral traditions, and sacred architecture, which again sort of makes sense with, I know we definitely mentioned it in part 1, but it was that, is it memory that's left here? Is it a message? That sort of thing. And we think about the petroglyphs, and it's obviously sharing knowledge and telling stories, but it's telling it not just as it's happening then, but it's also trying to tell it for future civilizations, in how they operated, how they built things, how they survived, etc. So yeah, I think that that's interesting, and I think again, it may be not so much in the paranormal side. It's probably more in that sort of more scientific side. But we've obviously scientists have sort of like tried to gauge the Earth's natural cycles as well. So, obviously when life begins and how long of a period it can operate, and then we go through like a global change, like the Earth will have something happen where it changes, and then we're in that period for a certain period of time, and then we come out of that, and then we move into the next phase. That's sort of what I'm getting from that, is that, yeah, we've had civilizations at different periods of time that have gone through their cycles, and it's just about, well, this is when we came about, this is how we've done whatever, and blah, 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 and move on again. But I also think that there's the element of the spiritual side of those civilizations as well that just adds that additional layer of curiosity and, questions. But moving into the lost perception hypothesis. So this theory proposes that ancient humans possessed heightened senses, so abilities we no longer seem to recognize, although I think we're starting to recognize them again, because I feel like we've gone through a strange cycle with COVID, and how we look at things post-COVID versus how we looked at them pre-COVID. So, yeah. Studies show that some people have still got this, what they call magnetoreception. I hope I've said that properly. Magnetoreception. Magnetoreception. I think that's how I say it. I could be wrong. It's too big of a word. The ability to sense Earth's magnetic fields in plain English. Meditation increases sensitivity to subtle energy. Shamans describe seeing energy lines in the landscape. Some individuals report geometric visions during altered states. So this theory suggests that ancient knowledge wasn't taught, it was actually perceived. Humans may once have had intuitive geometry, natural astronomical awareness, psychic sensitivity, heightened spatial perception, and the ability to sense resonance. So if it's true, the ancient code isn't a relic of a lost civilization, it's a relic of a lost human ability. Again, as we were just kind of touching on, I sort of rambled as we were coming into it, but but this is the funny thing, is sort of just finishing off that second hypothesis. It's almost now trying to compartmentalize it to be like, well, it's one or the other, not a combination of both? Or, now here's another fucking question. So that last two sentences, if that's the case, if it is a lost perception, then maybe it's not about a lost civilization, it's about a lost human ability. And I suppose when we then look back on different ancient cultures and their practices, and a lot of their practices were highly spiritual. There was a lot of things that were, a lot of decisions, a lot of life in general that was heavily influenced isn't the right word. Like it was the center of their civilization, if that makes sense. It's kind of the tree trunk of, well, here's our abilities and our spiritual connection and our religion. If religion was more specific, then I don't know if it's more just a spiritual connection. I'm not quite sure, but like, is that the core of the civilization? And then because that's the belief system, are they able to tap into that potential ability? And as time's gone on and we've evolved in a different way, we've then lost that ability as a collective. There are still people that can tap into that or want to tap into that, but there's also a large part that do not or don't believe it, or then kind of fall into that other side of the category where, it's if I can't see it, feel it, anything like that, then it doesn't exist. Does that make sense? Like, that's where I think, it then supports the evolution of human civilization, is that we've lost that connection. So maybe that's why we do compartmentalize what we do, because we don't have that connection in the same way that we did back then when they were building all these ancient structures. So that's got me thinking a little bit more about it, where it's sort of more like, well, is it more to do with that, or is it a combination of all? Because I think, again, a lot of the stuff that we talked about in part one was kind of looking more at the nitty-gritty of how did they know how to build things like this? How did they get this knowledge? And that now it's sort of looking at it from this perspective on different hypotheses about whether it's a lost civilization or a lost perception. has now kind of got me thinking, and it's sort of then kind of feeds back into the psychic architect theory as well, where it's sort of like, okay, well, yeah, I can see where all of this is kind of interwoven at this point. And again, I still feel like it's still posing more questions. It's like we can kind of explore it, but it's like, well, we can't get over this hurdle of not having more information. I mean, look, there is more out there, but I think there's obviously only a certain amount that we can get to before we go, well, where do we go from here to find the next level of answers? So, yeah, that one's got me thinking a little bit. Just that last two sentences. If true, the ancient code isn't a relic of lost civilization, it's a relic of lost human ability. That really kind of, at this point, has really kind of like permeated for me, where it's like, light bulb. I don't know about anybody listening if that's potentially raised things for you. I don't know. And then hearing me ramble about my thoughts. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Again, we've got a little bit of paranormal evidence in this as well, around the psychic archaeology. So we're going to kind of explore that a little bit and see, again, if it's sort of the same as part one, where there was different experiences that kind of weaved their way into some of these other things. So, yeah, let's see how this bit goes. This is where the veil thins in the paranormal evidence and psychic archaeology. Remote viewing experiments have produced startling results. Ingo Swann described Jupiter's rings before they were discovered. Other viewers have sketched ancient sites with uncanny accuracy. Mediumship at ancient sites has yielded strange accounts. At Chichen Itza, a medium described a ritual involving sound frequencies that was later confirmed by archaeologists studying the acoustics of the Temple of Kukulkan. EVP evidence includes rhythmic chanting in the Hypogeum of Malta, disembodied voices at Shavindir Dihuntua, and whispers recorded inside the Great Pyramid. Dream phenomena is common. Visitors to Uluru often report dreams of glowing geometric patterns. Tourists at Machu Picchu describe visions of rituals they have never even learned about. And meditators at Stonehenge report seeing figures in ancient clothing. Synchronicities and clusters around these ancient sites include repeating numbers, symbolic dreams, sudden intuitive insights, and shared visions among groups. Some researchers believe that ancient structures act as amplifiers, not of sound, but of consciousness. They may store memory, transmit information, or even activate latent human abilities. So again, I guess it's trying to put it in three different compartments, but I can see across part one and my rambling train of thoughts, and even in part two and my rambling train of thoughts, is that I think it's all of them. I don't think that I don't think that we can say, well, yes, it's this and nothing else, or it's got to be this, or it's got to be this. It can't be both. I think that I think because we've tried to compartmentalize it so much, it's almost put this rigid boundary around particular thoughts or theories. Let's just go with that one, around what it can or can't be. Whereas I think with where my mind is at right now, thinking about it, is that the boundaries are too rigid, which is why it's compartmentalized. So it's now got me thinking that it's like, well, I think you need to bring it back to the whole and see it all as one thing rather than separate things, because I don't think you're going to get answers looking at it as separate things. And I just felt my spirit guide sort of pop in and just nod at me. So I guess that means that I'm thinking about it in the right context as a human. Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like this. I'm going to have to really like look back on some of these other documentaries that I've watched and just see if there's any other, I guess more, when I say updated, more, of recent couple of years at least, and just see if there's any like additional stuff that either supports or creates a new thought process around ancient structures. I know there was a few different documentaries on Stonehenge, and I think I've managed to watch one, potentially two, but again, it was a little while ago, so I can't remember specifically, but I do remember one part of one of these documentaries or docuseries was that Stonehenge is sort of located in its own, part, but not far from there was like relics of potentially another type of structure. And it was just interesting. Like it was, I think from memory, it was like potentially a tomb sounds like the wrong word, but like a big structure, I guess, that is where, when through different grieving rituals when people pass away is, how they would store the remains of their loved ones and then how they're housed within this building type of thing. That was kind of, they were sort of looking at it, that what they believed it was something that was like a a tomb is probably the only word that I can think of right now, but not like a tomb. It was like a big communal thing, I guess. But anyway, I think, it'd be interesting to kind of like look back and see if there's any other sort of newer kind of documentaries or something or research even that might shed a bit more light than what I've been able to find. So kind of curious to even hear what everyone else thinks, if they've seen anything recently or they've learned something recently that may actually kind of help get me over the line of where we're at in these 2 episodes. Really keen to hear it. Because I feel like we're sort of scratching the surface, but we can't quite get beyond that because we're sort of limited in what knowledge we have at this point. So I guess the next thing is the big question. So what is the ancient code, really? And it's a relic of, a forgotten civilization, or is it a universal human ability that we've lost? Is it even a message that was left for future generations? Or is it something external? Or perhaps it was all of them. Perhaps the ancients weren't actually guessing. Perhaps they were actually remembering. And perhaps the knowledge wasn't just discovered, it was received. And perhaps the structures that they left behind, the pyramids, the stone circles, the temples aligned with the stars, are reminders, not of what they knew, but of what we've forgotten. Interesting. Again, I think that's kind of what we've covered off. I feel like we've been thinking about things, but I feel like we're still hitting roadblocks. So I feel like I'm going to have to revisit this at some point. Hopefully there'll be some more knowledge to share. But once again, this has been episode 2 of The Ancient Code. Lost knowledge or just a really good guess? And with this chapter, the journey through the Ancient Code comes to a close. 2 episodes, 2 somewhat deep dives into the mysteries of ancient knowledge, forgotten technologies, and the echoes of a world that still hums beneath our feet. Some mysteries are meant to stand alone. Some questions are meant to linger. And some stories are complete in their incompleteness. But the ancient code itself continues. In the stones, in the myths, in the dreams that rise through the night. And in the quiet moments when something old stirs just beyond the edge of our understanding. So, stay grounded, stay curious, and I guess always expect the unexpected. I just want to thank everybody for coming along on this journey with me. I know I haven't been able to do as intricate deeper dive as I'd hoped I'd been able to do, but again, I hope that we can revisit some of these theories or even just look at some more specifics of some of these ancient structures more in depth and see if we get more from it. But yeah, I did find this one really fascinating to kind of look into. Again, it's one of those things I think we're just always on a quest for answers and sort of hit by a few little roadblocks where we can't always get them. So yeah, if you've enjoyed these episodes, please, leave us a comment, send us a DM on social media. And again, if you've got any, extra knowledge or stories or anything about this topic that you'd like to share with me, or you may have an answer to a question that I've kind of posed in one of the episodes, please reach out and let me know. You can do that through the social media accounts, or you can send me an email at beyondtheveilaustralia.com. I'd be really curious to hear what other people's thoughts are on this topic, because I think it is, it's a really interesting one, and I just feel like we don't get enough information out of it. But yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed these episodes and that you've enjoyed my rambling and my tangents. It was definitely a good topic to explore and really get the brain thinking at different points in time of this process, both in the research and in the recording. So yeah, I guess for now, that's all from me, and stay tuned as we've got plenty more content coming up. And yeah, thanks again for listening. If you did like today's episode, again, please feel free to leave a comment, and if you can like or share, or even if you're on YouTube, subscribe, that would definitely be really helpful. It just helps this podcast get found by other paranormal enthusiasts like us that want to have another paranormal podcast to sink their teeth into. So once again, stay curious, stay grounded, and always expect the unexpected. That's all from me. And again, I will see you next time. Bye.